Captain Ryan Blake stared at the strange metal structure floating in space ahead of his ship. It was unlike anything humans had ever built. The structure was tall and twisted, made of some kind of shiny blue metal that seemed to glow with its own light. His crew on the exploration ship UES Frontier had been traveling for 6 months to survey this distant star system for a new human colony when they found it. "Sir, we're getting signals from that thing," said Lieutenant Amy Foster from her station. "It's definitely not one of ours." Blake felt his heart racing. This was it. After nearly a century of searching, humans had finally found proof they were not alone in the universe. He had dreamed of this moment since he was a child reading about space exploration. "Try to send them a greeting message," Blake ordered. "Use all the peaceful symbols we prepared for first contact." Back on Earth, Dr. Lisa Hayes was having her morning coffee when the emergency alert came through. As the chief scientist for alien contact, she had waited her whole career for this call. She quickly got dressed and rushed to the command center, where Admiral Jack Morrison was already waiting. "How long since first contact?" she asked, still trying to catch her breath. 40 minutes ago, Morrison replied, his face serious. "Blake's ship found some kind of alien station. They're trying to talk to whoever built it." Far away in space, Blake watched as his communications officer sent mathematical formulas and peaceful images toward the alien structure. For 20 minutes, nothing happened. Then suddenly, the structure began to move. It grew larger and brighter, changing shape before their eyes. "Captain, something's coming out of it," Foster reported. "It's big, really big." A massive ship emerged from the structure. It was 3 times the size of Blake's vessel and covered in the same glowing blue metal. Strange symbols ran along its sides, pulsing with different colors. The alien ship moved with incredible speed and grace, unlike anything human technology could achieve. "This is Captain Ryan Blake of Earth's Exploration Fleet," Blake broadcast on all frequencies. "We come in peace and wish to establish friendly relations with your people." The response came instantly, but not in any language they expected. Instead, the words appeared directly in their minds, clear and cold. "Primitive mammals. You dare to enter Zephyrian space without permission." Blake felt a chill run down his spine. The voice in his head was emotionless and dismissive, like someone talking to an annoying insect. "We didn't know this was your territory," Blake replied. "We're explorers from Earth looking for new worlds to settle. We mean no harm." "Earth?" The alien voice seemed amused. "The small world with the carbon-based creatures who barely learned to leave their atmosphere. We are aware of your kind." The alien ship moved closer, and Blake could see strange lights moving behind what looked like windows. The Zephyrians had been watching humanity all along. "I am Commander Vex Thaler of the Zephyrian Collective," the voice continued. "Your species has spread beyond your home world without authorization. This cannot be allowed." Blake felt confused. "Authorization? From who? We didn't know anyone else was out here." "Ignorance is not an excuse. The galaxy belongs to the Zephyrian Collective. We have ruled these stars for over 3,000 of your years. Lesser species are permitted to exist only on their birth worlds, under our guidance." Dr. Hayes listened to the recording of the conversation with growing worry. The alien spoke of humans like they were children who had wandered too far from home. She could hear the arrogance in every word. "They think they own the entire galaxy," she told Admiral Morrison, "and they've been watching us this whole time." Morrison clenched his fists. "What do they want?" Back in space, Commander Vex Thaler was explaining exactly what he wanted. "All human settlements beyond Earth must be abandoned immediately. Your colonies on Mars and Europa will be relocated. Your mining stations will be destroyed. Your species will return to Earth and remain there." Blake couldn't believe what he was hearing. "You can't be serious. Those colonies have millions of people. Mars has been our home for over 50 years. Your feelings are irrelevant. You have 7 of your days to begin evacuation. Any resistance will be met with appropriate force." "And if we refuse?" Blake asked, though he already feared the answer. "Then we will demonstrate the consequences of defying the collective." The transmission ended abruptly. Blake stared at the alien ship, which had now positioned itself between his vessel and Earth. He tried to contact the Zephyrian commander again, but received no response. 3 days later, Blake's worst fears came true. The asteroid mining station, New Hope, with its crew of 300 workers, simply vanished. One moment it was there on the sensors, the next it was gone. No explosion, no wreckage, just empty space where hundreds of humans had been living and working. Hours later, the mining station Deep Rock met the same fate. The Zephyrians had made their point clear. Admiral Morrison called an emergency meeting of Earth's Defense Council. Around the table sat the most powerful leaders of humanity, all trying to process what they had learned. They destroyed 2 mining stations without warning, Morrison reported. 600 people, gone in seconds. We don't even know how they did it. What are our options? Asked Elena Rodriguez, the head of Colonial Intelligence. Dr. Hayes shook her head sadly. From what we can tell, their technology is far beyond ours. Their ships are faster, their weapons more powerful. They've had thousands of years to develop while we've only been in space for less than a century. So we just give up? Morrison asked. Abandon Mars? Abandon Europa? Let millions of humans be forced back to Earth? The room fell silent. Everyone knew what abandoning the colonies would mean. Earth was already crowded. The colonies weren't just settlements, they were humanity's future. Elena Rodriguez spoke first. Our people on Mars and Europa won't come willingly. Many of them were born there. It's their home. And if we force them? Another council member asked. Then we're no better than the Zephyrians, Morrison replied. 5 days after the first contact, Commander Vexithaler appeared again on Blake's ship's communication screen. This time they could see him clearly. He was tall and thin, made of what looked like living crystal. His body reflected light in beautiful patterns, but his eyes were cold and empty. Your time is nearly expired, he said. We detect no evacuation efforts from your colonies. Perhaps another demonstration is required. Please, Blake said, trying to keep his voice steady. Can't we find some way to coexist? The galaxy is huge. There's room for everyone. Vexthaler's crystalline face showed what might have been amusement. You speak as if you are our equals. You are not. Your species is barely past using fire for warmth. We mastered the stars before your ancestors learned to make tools. But we're intelligent beings just like you, Blake argued. We have rights. Rights? Vexthaler's voice turned even colder. Rights are earned through strength and wisdom. You possess neither. You will obey, or you will be made to obey. The communication ended, and Blake knew that humanity's peaceful expansion into space was over. The Zephyrians had made their choice, and now humanity would have to make theirs. Admiral Morrison looked at the reports coming in from all the human colonies. Instead of evacuation preparations, he saw something else entirely. The colonists were digging in, preparing defenses, organizing militias. They weren't running. Morrison smiled grimly. The Zephyrians had made one critical mistake. They thought humans would act like every other species they had conquered. They were about to learn just how wrong they were. The Zephyrian ships arrived at Mars like a dark cloud blocking out the sun. Commander Vexithaler expected the Red Planet's 2 million human colonists to surrender immediately when they saw his fleet of 30 warships. Instead, the humans did, something no other species had ever done when faced with Zephyrian might. They fought back. General Marcus Stone stood in the command bunker deep beneath New Angeles, Mars's largest city. Through the thick windows, he could see the blue glow of alien ships landing across the planet's surface. His communication device buzzed with reports from colony commanders across Mars. Sir, they're setting up some kind of processing centers, reported Colonel Janet Price from the northern settlements. They want us to report there for relocation evaluation. Stone gritted his teeth. Tell everyone the same thing we told Earth Command. We're not leaving. On Europa, the ice-covered moon of Jupiter, Tony Vasquez watched through his helmet's visor as strange crystalline figures moved through his mining facility. The Zephyrians walked with confidence, their crystal bodies reflecting the lights of the equipment they were now claiming as their own. How many of them came down, whispered Maria Santos, crouched beside Tony in the maintenance tunnel. Maybe 50, Tony replied quietly. But they act like they own the place already. The Zephyrians had expected fear and quick submission. What they found instead was something they had never encountered in 3,000 years of conquest. The humans simply refused to cooperate. When Zephyrian soldiers ordered families to report to the processing centers, the humans said no and walked away. When the aliens tried to shut down the power plants, human engineers turned them back on. When Zephyrian commanders demanded to speak with human leaders, they found that every human considered themselves a leader. Commander Vexthaler stood in what used to be the Mars Colonial Government building, now converted into his headquarters. His aide, a younger Zephyrian named Kexmalar, approached with a worried expression. "Commander, the compliance rate is only 12%, Kexmalar reported. "Most humans are ignoring our relocation orders." Vexthaler's crystal body flashed with angry red light. "Impossible. No species has ever shown such widespread defiance." "There's more, sir. They're actively sabotaging our equipment. Yesterday, 3 of our transport ships were damaged. Today, 2 communication arrays went offline. This was not how conquests were supposed to work. Other species either submitted immediately or fought one big battle and then gave up. They didn't continue, fighting after losing their main military forces. Back on Earth, Dr. Alex Chen worked day and night in his laboratory. 3 weeks ago, he had been a simple weapons researcher. Now he was humanity's best hope for survival. On his work table lay pieces of Zephyrian technology recovered from destroyed alien equipment on Mars. "This is incredible," he muttered, examining. "A crystal power cell. Their energy source is completely different from ours, but the basic principles are the same." His assistant, Dr. Karen Moore, looked up from her computer screen. "Alex, you need to see this. I've been analyzing their ship movements. They follow the exact same patterns every time." Chen walked over and studied the data. "They're too predictable, like they've never had to adapt their tactics." "That's because they've never needed to," Moore replied. "Every other species probably fought the same way. Big fleets, direct battles, then surrender when they lost." Chen smiled for the first time in weeks. "But we don't fight like that, do we?" On Mars, Commander Kate Sullivan prepared for another night raid. She had been one of Earth's best fighter pilots before the invasion. Now she led a group of 20 volunteers in stolen Zephyrian aircraft, modified with human weapons and tactics. "Remember, hit fast and disappear," she told her team as they prepared their captured alien fighters. "They still don't understand how we think." The raid target was a Zephyrian supply depot outside New Angeles. Intelligence reports said it held food and equipment for the alien occupation forces. More importantly, it had guards who were starting to look nervous. Sullivan's team struck just before dawn. They came in low and fast, using the Martian canyons to hide their approach. The Zephyrian guards were expecting an attack from the front, following standard military doctrine. Instead, the humans came from 6 different directions at once. "What? Is this madness?" shouted the Zephyrian depot commander as explosions erupted around his facility. "This violates all principles of honorable warfare." But the humans weren't interested in honor. They were interested in winning. By the time Zephyrian reinforcements arrived, Sullivan's team had destroyed half the supplies and disappeared back into the maze of Martian valleys. The alien commander stared at the burning wreckage, trying to understand how such a small force had caused so much damage. On Europa, Tony Vasquez had become something the Zephyrians couldn't comprehend. A leader without rank or authority, who somehow commanded absolute loyalty. He didn't give orders. He made suggestions. He didn't demand obedience, he inspired action. "The processing center has 30 guards," he told the group of miners gathered in the old cafeteria. "But they're all standing in the open, like they're on parade." "What do you want us to do?" asked Pete Mitchell, a veteran ice cutter. "I don't want you to do anything," Tony replied. "But if someone happened to turn off the lights, and if someone else happened to open the emergency pressure valves, and if a few people happened to be carrying mining charges..." The miners nodded. They understood. That night, The Europa processing center went dark. Emergency alarms blared as pressure doors slammed shut throughout the facility. In the confusion, 30 Zephyrian guards found themselves trapped in a maze of tunnels they didn't understand, pursued by humans who had spent their lives working in similar conditions. By morning, the guards were gone. The humans had captured them without firing a shot. Dr. Chen's breakthrough came on a Tuesday. He had been working with salvaged Zephyrian weapons for 6 weeks when he finally understood how their energy systems worked. More importantly, he understood how to make them work better. "General Stone, you need to see this," he called over the communication link to Mars. That Stone appeared on the screen, looking tired but determined. "What do you have for me, Alex?" "I've figured out how to modify their weapons. We can't match their technology, but we can improve it. Make it faster, more efficient, more powerful." "How long?" Stone asked. 2 weeks for the first prototypes. A month for full production. "You have whatever you need," Stone promised. The war was changing. What had started as a simple occupation was becoming something the Zephyrians had never faced. A prolonged conflict against an enemy that refused to follow the rules. Commander Vex Thaler received reports from across human space that made no sense. On Mars, his forces controlled all major cities, but couldn't move between them safely. On Europa, his soldiers were disappearing one by one. Earth itself remained completely untouched, yet somehow continued to coordinate resistance across multiple worlds. "How are they communicating?" he demanded. "We've destroyed all their major communication arrays." "They appear to be using civilian networks," his aide reported. "Personal communication devices, private satellites. They've turned their entire technology base into a military network." Vex Thaler's crystal body pulsed with frustrated energy. Other species had armies. Other species had governments. Other species had leaders you could defeat or capture. But humans seemed to have none of these things, and somehow that made them stronger, not weaker. The turning point came when Kate Sullivan's raiders captured an intact Zephyrian command ship. Using Dr. Chen's modified weapons and Tony Vasquez's coordination tactics, they took the vessel without damaging its technology. For the first time since the invasion began, humans had a ship that could match Zephyrian speed and firepower. More importantly, they had access to Zephyrian military communications. "General Stone," Sullivan reported from the captured ship's bridge. "You're not going to believe what we're hearing on their military channels." "Try me," Stone replied. "They're scared. They don't understand what's happening. They keep asking each other why we won't surrender like other species." Stone smiled grimly. The Zephyrians were about to learn the difference between conquering a species and conquering humanity. Humans didn't just fight with weapons or tactics. They fought with something no other species in the galaxy possessed: the absolute refusal to accept defeat, no matter how impossible victory seemed. Ambassador Helen Carter had never seen anything like the alien ship that approached her diplomatic vessel. It was shaped like a flower, with petals made of what looked like living metal that moved gently in the vacuum of space. This was her first meeting with the Corvan Republic, and she hoped it would not be her last. "Human vessel, this is Speaker Nalthara of the Corvan science ship Gentle Current," came a voice that sounded like music. "We received your message about the Zephyrian conflict. We wish to speak." Carter felt her heart race with excitement. After months of sending messages into deep space, someone had finally answered. "Speaker Nalthara, this is Ambassador Carter representing Earth and its colonies. We're honored to meet you." The Corvan ship moved closer, and Carter could see beings moving behind transparent walls. They looked almost like tall, graceful humans, but their skin had a blue-green tint, and they moved with fluid motions that seemed to flow like water. "We know of your struggle against the collective," Nalthara said. "For 200 years they have occupied our home world. We thought resistance was impossible until we heard of your victories." Carter couldn't believe what she was hearing. "You've been fighting them for 200 years?" "Not fighting," Nalthara replied sadly. "Surviving. The Zephyrians took our world when we were a peaceful people. We had no weapons, no armies. They said we could live as long as we worked for them. We had no choice. Halfway across the galaxy, Captain Sam Rivera studied the tactical display showing his target. The Kepler 442 system contained the largest Zephyrian shipyard outside their home territory. Intelligence reports said it could build 10 warships every month. Rivera's job was to make sure it never built another one. His strike force consisted of 12 ships, all of them built with the hybrid human Zephyrian technology that Dr. Chen had developed. They were faster than anything humans had built before, but still smaller than true Zephyrian warships. Remember, we're not here to fight their fleet, Rivera told his captains over the communication channel. We hit the shipyard and get out before they can respond. Lieutenant Amy Foster, now serving as Rivera's tactical officer, studied the enemy positions. Sir, there are 43 Zephyrian ships guarding that facility. Then we'll just have to be 44 times smarter than they are, Rivera replied. Back in diplomatic space, Ambassador Carter was learning about the Ashanti Confederacy from their war leader, Commander Jorak Stern. The Ashanti looked like humans who had been carved from dark stone, with silver markings covering their faces and arms. My people were warriors before the Zephyrians came, Stern explained, his deep voice filled with controlled anger. We had honor, tradition, strength. They crushed us in one battle and told us fighting was forbidden. How long ago? Carter asked. 50 of your years. Since then we have been, what is your word? Slaves. We build their machines, grow their food, mine their metals, always watched, always controlled. Dr. Nina Walsh analyzed the intelligence data flowing in from across Zephyrian space. As Earth's top military analyst, she had spent the last 6 months studying every piece of information about their enemies. What she had discovered was changing everything they thought they knew about the war. Admiral Morrison, you need to see this, she called to her superior officer, Admiral Jake Thompson, who had replaced Morrison as fleet commander. When the older man was promoted to overall war leader, looked at the data on Walsh's screen. The Zephyrians have never fought a war like this, Walsh explained. Look at their ship designs. Look at their tactics. Everything is built for quick, overwhelming victories against enemies who fight conventionally. What does that mean for us? Thompson asked. It means they have no idea how to adapt. Every battle they fight, they use the same strategies they've used for thousands of years. They can't change because their entire culture is based on superiority. Through overwhelming force, Thompson studied the tactical analyses. So when we do something unexpected, they don't know how to respond, Walsh finished. That's why our raids have been so successful. That's why their occupation of our colonies is failing. They literally cannot understand how we think. Captain Rivera's attack on the Kepler 442 shipyard began at exactly 0300 local time. His ships came in from 12 different directions, using a tactic the humans called the swarm. Instead of forming neat battle lines like every other species, they attacked like angry insects, unpredictable and chaotic. The Zephyrian defenders tried to respond with their standard defense pattern, but there was no pattern to defend against. Human ships darted between the massive alien vessels, too small and fast to target effectively. They planted explosive charges on critical systems and disappeared before the Zephyrians could react. What kind of warfare is this? Demanded the Zephyrian shipyard commander as explosions tore through his facility. This violates every principle of civilized combat. But the humans weren't interested in civilized combat. They were interested in winning. Within 2 hours, the shipyard that had taken the Zephyrians 30 years to build was a floating ruin. Rivera's force escaped with only minor damage, leaving behind destruction that would take years to repair. The news of the shipyard's destruction spread through Zephyrian space faster than their commanders could suppress it. For the first time in their history, the mighty collective had suffered a major defeat. Slave species across a dozen worlds began to whisper about the humans who refused to surrender. On the Corvan homeworld, Nalthara received a secret message from the human ambassador. The Liberation Alliance was forming and the Corvans were invited to join. For the first time in 2 centuries, Nalthara felt something she had almost forgotten: hope. Commander Stern of the Ashanti faced a similar choice. His people had the skills and knowledge to fight, but they had been broken by decades of defeat. The humans were offering something no one had offered before: a chance to win. "My ancestors were warriors," Stern told his council of elders. "They fought with honor and died with pride. For 50 years we have lived without either. Perhaps it is time to remember who we are." Dr. Walsh's analysis proved correct when the Zephyrians attempted their first major counterattack. A fleet of 200 warships, the largest force they had ever assembled, moved to crush the human colonies once and for all. Admiral Thompson met them with 60 human ships and a battle plan that no military academy in the universe would have approved. Instead of engaging in ship-to-ship combat, the humans used what they called environmental warfare. They lured the Zephyrian fleet into an asteroid field near Jupiter, then used the asteroids themselves as weapons. Human ships attached engines to massive space rocks and hurled them at the alien formation. When the Zephyrians tried to destroy the asteroids, the explosions created clouds of debris that damaged their own ships. "This is madness," screamed the Zephyrian fleet commander as his ships crashed into each other, trying to avoid the flying rocks. Warfare has rules. It has honor. It has order. But human warfare had none of those things. It only had one rule: win at any cost. The Battle of Jupiter ended with the complete destruction of the Zephyrian attack fleet. Not destroyed by superior weapons or better ships, but by human creativity and the willingness to fight in ways that had never been tried before. Commander Vexa Thaler received the news in his headquarters on Mars, where his occupation was slowly falling apart. Human resistance had grown from small raids to coordinated attacks that his forces could not stop. Every day brought new reports of sabotage, ambushes, and disappearing patrols. "Sir," his aide reported nervously, "we're receiving messages from slave worlds throughout the sector. The humans are in contact with resistance groups on at least 20 planets." Vexthaler's crystal body flashed with alarm. 20 planets? "Yes, sir. And the number is growing. Species that haven't resisted us in centuries are suddenly organizing rebellions. They're calling it the Liberation Alliance." For the first time in his long career, Vexthaler understood what the primitive mammals had done. They hadn't just refused to surrender. They had shown the entire galaxy that the Zephyrian collective could be defeated. Now every oppressed world was rising up, inspired by the human example. The war was no longer about forcing humanity back to Earth. It had become something far more dangerous: a fight for the future of galactic civilization itself. And somehow, the species that the Zephyrians had dismissed as barely intelligent animals had become the leaders of the largest rebellion in galactic history. Ambassador Carter stood on the bridge of the first Liberation Alliance command ship, looking out at a fleet that included vessels from 12 different species: humans, Corvins, Ashanti, and others who had answered the call for freedom. "The Zephyrians made one critical mistake," she said to the mixed crew around her. "They thought strength came from dominance. They never understood that true strength comes from standing together." The final phase of the war was about to begin, and for the first time in 3,000 years, the Zephyrian collective faced an enemy that matched their technology, outnumbered their forces, and fought with something they had never possessed: the unbreakable will of free peoples fighting for their homes. The planet Zephyr Prime had never been attacked in its 3,000-year history. It floated in space like a giant blue crystal, protected by energy shields and defended by the largest fleet in the galaxy. Every Zephyrian believed their homeworld was impossible to conquer. Fleet Admiral Connor Walsh stood on the bridge of the Liberation Alliance flagship Freedom's Dawn, studying the enemy defenses with his mixed crew of humans and aliens. The final battle of the Galactic War was about to begin, and everyone knew the stakes. If they failed here, the rebellion would collapse and every free world would fall back under Zephyrian control. "Sir, we count over 800 enemy ships around the planet," reported Lieutenant Dave Chen, the son of Dr. Alex Chen, who had helped develop their technology. "Their orbital defense platforms have weapons we've never seen before." Walsh nodded grimly. "What about the superweapon?" Dr. Rebecca Torres, now serving as Chief Science Officer, looked up from her instruments. "It's there, deep inside the planet's core. Our intelligence was correct. They call it the Star Killer. One shot can destroy an entire world." The Star Killer was the Zephyrians' final desperate plan. If they couldn't win the war, they would destroy every rebel world one by one until the survivors surrendered. It was the kind of weapon that could end not just the rebellion, but entire civilizations. President Laura Mitchell watched the battle preparations from Earth, knowing that millions of lives depended on the next few hours. She had been elected to lead humanity during the war, and now she faced the most important decision in human history. Win or lose, the galaxy would never be the same. "Admiral Walsh," she said over the long-range communication link, "you have authority to do whatever is necessary. Bring our people home." Walsh understood. The plan they had developed was dangerous and would require sacrifices, but it was the only way to stop the Star Killer before the Zephyrians could use it. Commander Pete Davis led the most dangerous part of the mission. While the main fleet attacked the orbital defenses, his small team would infiltrate Zephyr Prime itself and destroy the superweapon from the inside. His strike force included the best soldiers from every species in the Alliance. "Remember, we only get one chance at this," Davis told his team as their stealth ship approached the planet. "If the Zephyrians activate that weapon while we're inside, every world in the Alliance dies." The battle began with the largest space fleet in galactic history attacking the most heavily defended world ever built. Ships from dozens of species fought side by side, using tactics that no military commander had ever imagined. The Zephyrians tried to fight back with their traditional formations, but they faced an enemy that refused to follow any rules. Human ships used Corvan cloaking technology to appear and disappear like ghosts. Ashanti warriors boarded Zephyrian vessels and fought hand-to-hand in their corridors. Other species contributed their own unique abilities to create chaos in the enemy ranks. "This is impossible," screamed the Zephyrian fleet commander as his carefully organized defenses crumbled. "How can so many different species work together? It violates all military logic." But the Liberation Alliance didn't care about military logic. They cared about freedom. Admiral Walsh coordinated the massive battle from his flagship, watching as hundreds of ships engaged in the most complex space combat ever fought. The Zephyrians had superior individual vessels, but they couldn't adapt to fighting an enemy that included dozens of different species with completely different fighting styles. "Admiral, the enemy is falling back to the inner defense ring," reported his tactical officer, "but their losses are still minimal compared to ours." Walsh knew the casualties were mounting. For every Zephyrian ship destroyed, the Alliance lost 3 or 4 vessels. But that had always been part of the plan. They weren't trying to win through superior firepower. They were trying to create enough chaos for Davis to reach the Star Killer. Deep inside Zephyr Prime, Commander Davis and his team moved through crystal tunnels that pulsed with strange energy. The planet itself was alive, grown rather than built, and it resisted their presence like an immune system fighting infection. "The weapon chamber is 2 levels down," whispered Korvac Nalthara, the Corvan scientist who had volunteered for the mission. "But the tunnel ahead is guarded by automated defenses." Davis studied the corridor through his visor. Beams of lethal energy crossed the passage at random intervals, creating a deadly maze that would kill anyone who tried to pass. "Sarah, you're up," he said to Technical Sergeant Sarah Miller, the best infiltration specialist in the human military. Miller studied the energy pattern for 30 seconds, then moved. She danced through the beams like she was performing ballet, twisting and diving with perfect timing. In less than a minute, she had disabled the entire defense system. "Clear," she called back. Above them, the space battle raged with increasing intensity. Admiral Walsh's flagship shuddered under enemy fire as Zephyrian reinforcements arrived from across their empire. The Alliance fleet was outnumbered 3-1, but they kept fighting with desperate courage. "Sir, we're losing ships faster than we can replace them," his aide reported. "How much longer can we hold?" "As long as it takes," Walsh replied. "Davis will succeed, he has to." In the weapon chamber, Commander Davis stared at the Star Killer in amazement. It was beautiful and terrifying, a crystal structure the size of a building that hummed with enough power to destroy stars. But it was also protected by something they hadn't expected. "It's guarded by Zephyrians," reported Sergeant First Class Mike Torres, Davis's demolitions expert. At least 50 of them, and they know we're here. The final battle wasn't fought in space between fleets of starships. It was fought in a crystal cavern deep inside an alien world, between a small team of Alliance soldiers and the desperate defenders of the galaxy's most powerful weapon. Davis led the charge across the cavern floor, his team's weapons blazing. The Zephyrians fought with the fury of beings defending their last hope, but they had never faced opponents like these. Humans who refused to retreat, Corvans who fought with fluid grace, and Ashanti warriors who sang battle songs as they advanced. The fight lasted only minutes, but it felt like hours. When the crystal dust settled, Davis stood alone beside the Starkiller, his team scattered across the cavern. Half of them would never go home. "Sarah, can you shut it down?" he asked Miller, who was working frantically at the weapons control system despite a wound in her shoulder. "I can do better than that," she replied with a painful smile. "I can turn it against their orbital defenses." The Starkiller's energy beam shot upward through the planet's crust and into space, but instead of destroying Alliance worlds, it swept through the Zephyrian defense fleet. In seconds, the most powerful weapons in the galaxy became tools of liberation. Commander Vexithaler watched from his command ship as his defenses disintegrated around him. The impossible had happened. The primitive mammals and their allies had defeated the greatest empire in galactic history. "How?" he whispered, as his ship's systems failed. "How did they win?" The answer came from an unexpected source. Admiral Walsh's voice echoed across all frequencies as the battle ended. "You never understood what makes us strong," Walsh said. "It's not our weapons or our ships. It's that we fight for each other. We fight for freedom, and we never, ever, give up." The war ended not with a great explosion, but with a simple message broadcast across every world in Zephyrian space. "You are free." 5 years later, President Mitchell stood in the Great Assembly Hall on the neutral world of Haven. Representatives from over 200 species had gathered to sign the Galactic Cooperation Charter, creating the first truly democratic government the galaxy had ever known. "We didn't fight this war to become conquerors," Mitchell told the assembled delegates. "We fought it to prove that every species, no matter how small or weak, has the right to determine its own destiny." Former Commander Vexthalar, now a reformed leader working for galactic peace, approached the podium. His crystal body had lost its harsh blue glow and now showed softer colors that reflected humility and wisdom. "The collective ruled through fear and superiority," he said in his first public speech since the war's end. "The humans taught us that true strength comes from cooperation and mutual respect. We have much to learn from them." Dr. Rebecca Torres watched the ceremony from the observation deck, surrounded by children from a dozen different species. They played together without caring about the differences that had once divided their peoples. "Did we really change everything?" asked young Tim Walsh, Admiral Walsh's son, as he played with a Corvan child whose skin shimmered with bioluminescent patterns. Torres smiled as she watched human, Zephyrian, Corvan, and Ashanti children laugh together. "Yes, Tim, we really did." Admiral Walsh, now retired, stood on the observation deck of his home on Mars looking up at the stars. The red planet was no longer a frontier colony but a thriving world where beings from across the galaxy came to learn about human determination and courage. He thought about all the battles they had fought, all the friends they had lost, and all the impossible victories they had achieved. The galaxy was peaceful now, united by choice rather than conquest. But most importantly, he thought about the lesson humanity had taught the universe, that sometimes the smallest voice, raised in defiance of impossible odds, could change everything. The age of galactic tyranny was over. The age of galactic cooperation had begun. And it all started because one species refused to accept that might makes right, proving instead that right makes might when free peoples stand together.